Welcome back to the Bricks. We're up to step number 7 in our investment formula. Today we're covering off on land value and getting the right amount of land when you're purchasing your property, as well as scarcity, which flows on perfectly from our previous step where we covered off on emotional character appeal. So let's get straight into it. The first point here that we want to cover off is land ratio. Now we know that land appreciates over time. It's been proven in the stats that the land that you hold in your investment property is what is actually going up in value, because that is the commodity that is scarce. There is only so much land around Melbourne, so you need to make sure that when you're buying this property that you're getting good land content. Now when I say that, it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to buy the biggest block that you possibly can, because it's all about land value. So as we know, land closer to the city tends to be more expensive, where you might be paying $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 per square metre. And if we go 50 to 100 kilometres from the Melbourne CBD, you'll find that the land value may be only a few $100s per square metre or even less. So you have to make sure that you get the right amount of land content that has the value. So as a general rule for myself, when I'm buying a property, I want at least 50% ratio from land to the actual property asset value. So if there's a property that's worth $1 million, I want to make sure that at least 50% of that value is held in the land. So at least $500,000 of land content has to come with that sale. Now, if you buy a property that is just purely land, it doesn't tick a lot of my other boxes of my formula. So if you buy a block of land that's 500 square meters and there's no block on there, or there's no house on there at all, and it's $500,000, and so it's just purely land content, yes, that ticks the boxes for this particular part of the step, but it doesn't tick a whole lot of the other boxes necessarily with the rest of my formula. So it's just important to note that quickly, so not everyone goes out and just buys blocks of land, because we know that a part of my formula is renovating period properties or character homes that have scarcity. So back to this land content side of things. So if we're getting properties that have this at least 50% ratio in there of land value in the total purchase price, then we have to start thinking about the types of properties that are actually going to have that much value inside the land. So we have to be careful not to overpay on a small block of land where the house itself is maybe brand new or it's recently been renovated, and you end up paying way too much for the actual property, which is depreciating on the land. It's going backwards, while you've only bought a small portion of land, which we know is the portion that is appreciating. So for units, you do tend to have issues with those where the land content is quite difficult to get the ratio above 50%. So you do find then that houses are better to buy in regards to getting that land content, but it doesn't mean that units or townhouses and apartments aren't also going to meet this formula. So in general then, if we're thinking about this part of my formula, that houses will tend to have more land, so they will tend to be easier to find properties that will meet this ratio, that 50%, whereas apartments and townhouses, they may be more challenging to get the ratio correct. If we're talking about how do we calculate the actual ratio, then on a basic level, let's talk about a house. So you've got a house, it's a 600 square meter, 3-bedroom home, and what we want to do is try and work out what the land value is. So we know what the purchase price is potentially. Let's say that that's $1.2 million. Then to work out and meet this actual land ratio content of 50%, we need the land to be at least $600,000 of value or more. And to work that out, it is quite easy. Most of the time what you can do is find recent sales that are nearby. So maybe a block of land with a rundown house is sold, or maybe there are vacant blocks that have sold. And you've got to work out how much each square metre of the land you're buying is worth. So for example, the middle ring suburbs of Melbourne, let's say $2,000 per square metre is quite common. So then for us to try and work out if our land is worth more than $600,000 to meet this ratio, so we really need 300 square meters of land to reach that $600,000 threshold, because 300 square meters at $2,000 a square meter is $600,000. So if we're buying a property at 1.2 million and we're trying to get $600,000 of value from the land or more, then we know that for this particular example, $600,000 $2,000 per square metre. The land already is worth around 1.2 million and the price itself is 1.2 million. So in this example, the house might be worth nothing and it actually might be quite run down. Or you might just be onto a bargain price. Now, an example for an apartment, just so you don't get disheartened, because I know houses is a lot easier to work out and it's a lot easier to meet this ratio, but you can do it with units. So a common example is, again, inner middle ring suburbs, you have apartment blocks of 10 to 20 apartments that were built in the 60s and 70s. And what you'll find is a lot of these blocks are quite large. So let's say, for example, we've got a 1,000 square metre block. There's 10 units on the block, and per square metre, it's worth $3,000. The land that it's built on is worth $3,000 a square metre. So suddenly at 1,000 square metres, you've got $3 million divided by the 10 units that are actually sitting on there. If for some reason they would have knocked down the whole site, all the apartments were knocked down, that land there would be worth $3 million split between 10 owners. So what that means is, in this example, to keep it basic, you got $300,000 per owner. That's what they're getting when they're buying a unit of this property. So what that means is, as long as their apartment is sitting somewhere between that $400,000, $600,000 mark, then they've got the 50% ratio covered by a long way. So you can do it with both, and that's why you would hear a lot of people in the media, experts on property investment, aren't telling you to buy into high-rise apartment buildings. They're telling you to buy into these smaller ones because you're getting a higher portion of the land content. So to get this land ratio calculation correct, you do need to do your research. You will need to find out what land value is. Another great way to do this is to look at the council rate statement, which has a land value apportioned to it. Now, this isn't always accurate, but this can help guide you in your research so you can make sure that you're meeting this criteria and getting that ratio above 50%. Getting this ratio right for the land component will then force you to look into areas that have high value land. And what that means is you're going to look into areas often established that have a scarcity of land available, because you just know that the land there is appreciating because you don't have a whole lot of blocks everywhere that are available for people to buy. But when we're talking about scarcity, there are three important things alongside that land component to get correct. You need to make sure that you're looking into the scarcity of the suburb, you're looking into the scarcity of the property type, and you're looking into the scarcity of the actual period of the property. So that's suburb scarcity, or the particular position that the property's in, or the aspect, everything that we've mentioned in some previous videos. That scarcity is going to continue to push your price up. And then if we look into period appeal, it's something that we've spoken about in the previous video. That period home from the 1900s that everyone wants to buy. It's a scarce commodity. There aren't an unlimited supply, or there isn't an unlimited supply of that sort of property, and they're not building them anymore. Someone could try and recreate a period home from back in the day, but it's not the same. So you need to make sure that you have that style scarcity as well. If you've got a home that everyone in the suburb has and they're still building them and they're really common, this is something that a lot of townhouses fall into when they're all built exactly the same. It's not a scarce commodity. There's no scarcity there, and they're going to continue to come. And then the third one, let's look at the scarcity of property type. So as we know, government is pushing really hard for higher density properties because we need to be able to build more homes so people have a place to live as our population continues to grow over time. And the quicker that it grows, the more high density properties that we need. So you need to know that the properties that are being built are more likely to be high density. So that means, your townhouses, your high-rise apartments, they're very commonly built. So then what are the scarce properties? They're the houses, and they're not necessarily the new build houses, but they can be in certain areas. They are properties that are scarce because there's only a few of them and there's not many being built. So remember, the reason I'm saying scarcity so much is I want you to remember that this is all about buying a property, buying an investment that is difficult for others to buy, because that is what's going to push the price up into the future. Getting that land component right, getting the property style right, the suburb, as well as the property type, all of these factors will work for you into the future to push your price up higher and higher in value. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, make sure to leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your feedback. If we've missed out something that you're really wanting to know, make sure you let us know. But till next time, it's Craig Nickel, The Bricks.